Okay, this is the video for the introduction to the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF. Hopefully you've got a chance to watch that 6 or 7 minute video from the Bretton Woods System, but just let me go over a couple of points about that video. Because of the Great Depression, central banks around the world abandoned their gold standard. Gold standard meant that for every bar of gold that you had at a fixed rate of exchange to your currency, you could then issue the appropriate amount of paper money and coins that don't have gold or silver in them. That system got blown so out of whack because of the Great Depression. People started just pumping money into the system without gold, that after World War II's devastation, there needed to be a readjustment and a formal sit down. So this is what's happening in the woods of New Hampshire. Now, with this, you have an understanding that the American economy, being the most stable coming out of the Second World War, is going to become a de facto gold standard. It wouldn't surprise you to know, or shouldn't surprise you to know, that American dollars are welcome all around the world. They really are. You know, even in places like China, where we're having the trade war, American dollars are there. That people want dollars to be paid for stuff in other countries. So half, or more than half, of the physical dollars that our country has in circulation are sitting in somebody else's deposit boxes or central banks. Saddam Hussein, I think, was captured, and he had $3 billion of U.S. currency in a tractor trailer. So basically, this is the way the post-World War II world is operating. It's operating with dollars converting to gold and currencies converting or linking to the dollar. So we're the lifeline. We're that anchor, or that, not the anchor, but the lifeline that keeps the world afloat. All right, so the IMF, specifically coming out of this time period, is looking at rebuilding the war-torn economies. So that's pretty much West Germany, Japan, France, Belgium, Italy. Not the Soviet bloc. The Soviets didn't want any part of this. They're not invited. They don't want to be part of this. Stalin had his own plan. So Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Russia, East Germany, not part of this. But we need to have the financial stability, a sound currency. We need to have good business practices, good banking practices, and that's what the IMF is there for. The second wave comes later in the 1950s and into the 60s, 70s, and even into the early 80s. And those are all the newly independent countries that are rising out of the colonial empires. The British and French colonies in Africa, Portuguese colonies in Africa. I mean, some of these struggling countries now don't understand how to do it, don't have the talent to do it. So they're calling on the IMF to do it, to come in. And this is that Article 4 consultations, the checkup from the neck up, to go in and give these kind of solid recommendations. This is what you need to do. This is how you do it. Now, the IMF is a tourniquet on a bleeding wound. It is not the be-all and end-all. The patient here must rehabilitate, must recover first, and then rehabilitate. What we're doing right now is just stopping the bleeding and hoping that somewhere down the line, you know, they make these recommendations and turn them into reality, and then grow a healthy economy from that. Some of the other problems that are in these countries that got them to that point, that the colonial experience didn't solve, are going to take generations to fix. That's not the IMF. The IMF is working in that 1 to 5 year time frame mostly. Anything that's going to take 1 or 2 generations, that's the World Bank's job. But the World Bank and the IMF do work together. Their headquarters are both in Washington, D.C., so it shouldn't surprise you. And both those organizations do have a very heavy weighted voting system, which countries that put in, like the United States, are the ones who are going to have the most votes. Just the way it is, guys. You know, get over it. I mean, this is what happens. So the IMF is just as important today because of countries that are running into things like corruption. Countries that are mismanaged. They're too tight with their banking system. They're not allowing capital to come in, or money to come in, or money to leave when it needs to. Countries that artificially control their exchange rates. This is not good. This is going beyond what you need to do. You have to admit that you got a problem because your exchange rate is going up, down, and you guys have seen this with the foreign currency project, that you're going to have to really rein that in, and you rein it in by doing good, sound, fundamental monetary policies and sound fiscal policies, taxes, budgets, spending. The IMF will go tell you, look, you're spending too much money on your military. Why do you need a military? You don't need a military. Cut it back. Put it into social programs like healthcare, education, infrastructure, like roads and power systems. I mean, we turn on the light and it goes on. Why is that? Because 100 years ago, people were investing in companies, had the trust in the companies and the banking system to then grow these companies to put a power system or a water system in place. Now, those of you whose parents and grandparents come from the old country know how unreliable some of these places are when it comes to turning on the switch. But again, you need a sound banking system. You need a sound policy system in place to do this, or any recommendation from the IMF is going to go nowhere. All right, so hopefully you get into the PowerPoints. I'll try to make them as sane as possible. You check the videos out, the links that are there. There's also a separate page in this unit that are just videos, not of everything, so you can kind of compare and go back and forth. And hopefully they're in small enough digestible chunks that you can understand them. Please see your teachers about any questions you have, and I'll get back to them as fast as I can. Thanks.